When I was single, I had a friend who was making very risky life choices. And I got involved with him. He used to call me. He was a little younger than I was. And for a number of years, we used to be in touch as our lives sort of headed in their own directions. The one thing I would hear from him constantly was, my parents are pure evil. Like, if God created evil and put it into two people in this world, one would be my mother and one would be my father. And that was how he spoke about his parents for years. A couple years later, I had the opportunity to meet his parents. And I was gearing myself up for them to show up to the meeting, parking their brooms outside. I was expecting Hitler and Stalin to walk into the room. And I had a meeting for about 3 or 4 hours with these people. And I was so perplexed. I literally met the two nicest people I think I've ever met in my life. Genuinely warm, caring, encouraging, sweet, wonderful people. And I was taken for a loop. So when I came out of that meeting, I picked up the phone and I called up someone who I consider very wise, a rabbi who's older than me. And I called him up and I said, I'd like you to explain what just happened here. You have a child who, in his reality, these two people are the worst people in the history of the world. And I meet with them, and I think these people are the greatest people. Could you explain this to me? So he told me a fundamental principle as follows. He said, every relationship is unique. Good people don't necessarily make good spouses. Good spouses don't necessarily make good parents. Good parents don't necessarily make good in-laws. Good in-laws don't necessarily make good grandparents. Every job is unique. You could be the nicest person, but you're a terrible parent. You could be the greatest parent, but you're a terrible spouse. And he said, this boy was looking at his parents as parents. And in his reality, his parents are the worst parents ever. I was looking at them as people. And people, they were great, wonderful people. But the tools and the things that they needed to convey over to their child, there was something lacking. I was once on a Shabbaton, on a weekend, with a bunch of secular Jews. And I threw out the following question. I said, who here would like to have a marriage where 5 years after the marriage, you're ready to give up your right arm for the person? You love the person so much that you'll give up your right arm for the person. And every single hand in that room went up. Every single hand. Nobody goes into marriage saying to themselves, you know what I'd like? An okay marriage. If I could get by, I'll be okay. Nobody does that. Everybody goes in saying, I want a marriage that's a grand slam. The greatest marriage that I ever could have possibly dreamed of. So I said to them, I want to follow this up with another question. What do you think the chances in your society are of you actually succeeding in your goal? And one person stood up and she said, it's actually very slim that we'll ever reach the goal that we're setting out for today. In their community, the divorce rate was about 50%. So, okay, 50% on average, US statistics, the average couple that gets divorced will get divorced within 8 years. So let's understand this. Within 5 years, you'll have given up your right arm for the person. And within 8 years, you'll have lost your arm and lost your spouse. And they were totally floored. I said, now let's start talking about marriage. Now let's start understanding that the goals that we're setting are unrealistic goals because so many people before you have set those goals, and yet very few have actually achieved them. ask yourself this question. Who do I know who's very close to me, who has a marriage that I would like to emulate? Ask yourself that question. Is it your parents? Is it a sibling? Is it a cousin? Because very often we have these like lofty dreams and goals, and then you say to yourself, wait a second, there's so many people I know who also had those, but they're not actually capitalizing on it. They're not actually there. If my parents had that dream to have this marriage, which is just a utopian marriage, so then shouldn't I look up to them and say, yeah, I want that? If my siblings had that, if my cousins had that? But so often we ask the question, yeah, would you like to have this? Do you want to have the most amazing marriage ever? Yeah, sure, I want it. Great. Did your parents say this? Yeah, they did. And how are they doing? Yeah, okay, How about your siblings, your cousins, your friends? And of course, everybody could find that person, maybe, hopefully, that we say, yeah, that person, they got it. They figured it out. But the question is, why is it that so many people set out to do it, and yet so few people actually achieve the goals that they set out to achieve? I lived in Israel for a number of years. And downstairs from where I lived, there was this woman who, the way she interacted with her children was beyond the pale. You could see that every time she spoke to her kids, there was a system to what she was doing. She would talk to them, and you could tell she thought out what she was doing. She realized that every single interaction with her children was part of a master plan. There's a system here, and the system is I'm not just winging it. Big, important things in our life, we don't wing. You want to learn how to drive? You go to driver's ed. There's a certain amount of hours you have to go behind the wheel, a certain amount of classes. You don't just wing certain things. Certain things there's a system to. You want to become a CPA? There's the 4E requirement. Education, experience, ethics, and of course the exam. There's so many things in our life that are important. And when they're important, we go through them. We say to ourselves, let's see if there's a system, a proven system that works. And if there is, why should I leave myself out of that system and just try to wing it? My barber had to pay a few $1,000s for barber school so that he could learn how to cut somebody's hair. There's licensing requirements. In marriage, it's one of, if not the most important decision that any of us will ever make in our entire lives. And so many people, you say, hey, what's your system for marriage? What's your goal when you turn to your spouse and you say to them something? What are you trying to accomplish with that? And so many people will tell you, you know what the answer is? I'm winging it. I don't know. Hopefully she won't get too mad at me. Hopefully I didn't forget something that was really important. And when she does start yelling at me, all I know is there's one answer. I'm sorry, honey. I know exactly how to fight with her. She has her moment to yell at me. I have my moment to take responsibility. And within 5 minutes, everybody says, I'm sorry, honey. And that's the end of it. We know how to fight perfectly well together. Important things in life, we don't wing. Important things in life, there are systems to. And important things in life, if you subscribe to a proven system which works, chances are you're going to see tremendous results. Every day, each one of us takes a brick, and we put that brick down. And the next day, we take another brick, and we put it next to that brick. And slowly but surely, over our lives, we're building a tower. If I come over to you after 2 or 3 days and I say to you, hey, you're building this tower, but the way you're building it, it's not going to work. The way you're building this tower, it's going to come out all lopsided. So chances are, after a couple days, you're going to look at me, you'll say, oh, really? That's great to know. All right, I'll take the bricks down and I'll put them back in the right order and I'll build something. But very often, somebody comes over to us after 20, 30, 40 years of doing something, and it's totally wrong. And we say to them, hey, look at all these bricks that you put down. I'm sorry to tell you, this tower, it's all messed up. It's on an angle. It's all wrong. You know what we do? We call it the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We take pictures, we put it on postcards, and we just say, look, this is what it is. So many times, we know what could be changed. We know, yeah, if I would do something right, then maybe it would make a difference. But It's like we're just taking pictures already. It's all just on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and we're just like, look how happy we are, or look how unhappy we are, and just look where we're holding. There's just not much we could do at this point. But I have to tell you that that's the wrong mentality. In the Air Force, they teach pilots the 1 in 60 rule. The 1 in 60 rule says that for every 1 degree off that you travel 60 nautical miles, you will be 1 mile off your destination. So if you fly for 60 miles and you're 1 degree off, you're going to be a mile off of your target, just 1 degree off. And if you fly around the world and your destination was New York, you're going to end up somewhere in Ohio. You're not going to be even close to where you want it to land. Because over long distances, if you make a tiny change, that 1% change can make a tremendous impact over a long time. Every interaction between a husband and wife, every interaction between a parent and a child is a brick that's being put down. It's either being put in the right place or it's being put a little bit off. Or like my friend's parents, they were being so far off the mark that he was convinced that these two people were the most evil and horrible people to ever exist. Not because they were bad people, but because as parents, the bricks that they were instilling in their children, at least from his perspective, were off the mark. It's so important that we don't just say, okay, I'm complacent, I'm all right. The way I am right now is okay. If you're doing great, then great. Give yourself a pat on the back. But if you could take even one tool from this whole seminar and you could change the course of your marriage just 1 degree, then I guarantee you over not even 60 years or 60 days, you'll see tremendous improvement and results. If that one time you were going to yell, lock yourself in your room, not talk to your spouse for a couple days or hours, or you're going to say something nasty, if you change that, guaranteed you're going to start seeing results and improvements in your life. Every marriage is unique. That's okay. That's fine. Your marriage and somebody else's marriage are unique, and the way you interact with your spouse is unique because every person is unique, and that's fine and beautiful and wonderful. Some people might look at this course and say, hey, this tool, it really, really, really spoke to me. You know, sometimes when I'm teaching, I have a student who sits there and they go, wow, this idea is incredible. Let's talk about this. And we could talk about it for 2 or 3 hours. And it's an idea that the last 50 students who I taught, the same idea, it didn't speak to them at all. They said, okay, yeah, that's nice idea. And they just went on with it. If you find something in here that speaks to you, run with it. Even if your friend is like, or even if your spouse is like, I hear that, but it's not really for me. Take it and develop it within you. Certain ideas are very simple. You'll get them right off the bat. And certain ideas, they do take time to become a part of a new lifestyle. Some ideas are actually ideals. There's something which would be wonderful if one day we could get to, but don't kill yourself if you're not there tomorrow. This is a journey of 1,000,000 miles. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Don't think to yourself, wait a second, I just listened to this class. Why is my marriage not, why don't we go straight from here to buy flowers and candies for each other? It doesn't necessarily work that way. Certain things are ideals which take time. As long as you have your goal directly in front of you, you have a clear mission where you're headed. That's beautiful and wonderful. You'll get there eventually. But some ideas are ideals, and that's very, very important to remember as well. Many of these ideas are life-changing, and if you implement them, you will see tremendous results. Now, some people watching this may say, okay, I'd like to do this, but my spouse is not on board. And very often that happens. Somebody goes to marriage counseling, somebody goes to rabbinic counseling, and they say, all right, this is my problem. The man sits down, he says, this is my problem. In short, 2 words, my wife. And he lays out all of the issues that he has with his wife. Or the wife will come and say, here's my problem, my husband, this and this and this, and they give a whole list of issues that their spouse has. And it's not ideal to have counseling or therapy of any sort with just one person participating. However, if somebody who's going through this class, these courses, they say to themselves, you know what, this is something which speaks to me, but my spouse is not on board, that's okay. Take what you can get, implement it into your marriage without fighting the system. Meaning, take something, try to change yourself as best you can, and very often you'll see that the other person will reciprocate because of what you're bringing into the marriage. Now, I'm a big fan that men should know about men and women should know about women and men. You have to have a clear picture for what your marriage is supposed to look like. A husband shouldn't just know, this is my role, but I have no idea what she's trying to accomplish. A woman shouldn't say, well, I know what I have to say, but whatever he says is like a Pandora's box. I have no idea. Will he fly off the handle? Will he throw something? That, in my mind, is not an ideal situation, and it would be really great if both husband and wife were on board, and if when they're on board, they know, this is my role, this is my spouse's role, and let's try to do this together. If you're able to do this, find a quiet place to listen, sit down with a notebook, and try to go through this systematically. Now, in certain communities, it's accepted that there's premarital classes before a person gets married. They sit down with a rabbi or somebody else or woman, and they sit down and they get education in preparation for their marriage. This course is not instead of that. This course is there to help those who want to help themselves. Ideally, somebody who's going to get married or somebody who is married who would like to receive further education, it's important that they find somebody who could give them spiritual guidance as to what a marriage is supposed to look like, somebody who could identify when there's mental imbalances and issues, somebody who has the medical knowledge necessary to guide a couple who's married and who has marriage-related issues, somebody who could deal with intimacy and intimacy issues, as well as somebody who can identify and help develop the emotional health and well-being of people who are going to sit by them. We will focus on the first and the last of the 5 things that I just said. We're going to focus on the overall context of marriage along with practical tools, as well as the emotional health and well-being of each spouse, and knowing every brick that we're putting down between a husband and a wife, what that brick is there to accomplish and how to do that. This is not therapy. This is not therapy at all. If somebody feels that there's something which strikes a chord and they say, hey, this is something that I have to work on, this is something I have to develop, I have to bring out for myself, please find somebody who could help you, whether it's a rabbi, it's a mentor, it's group therapy, it is therapy, it's a social worker, whatever it may be, please find that person and utilize their resources, because therapy in and of itself is a tremendous resource. Therapists have to be vetted that they fit your criteria and that you're finding somebody who speaks and works with you very well. The therapy is a tremendous tool. This is not therapy. This is education-based Torah knowledge, which was received by myself as well as a few other students from tremendously smart and brilliant rabbis who passed this on to us over a number of years. This is not information that I figured out in my time married to my wife that I said, hey, I just came up with this beautiful system. That's not what happened here. This is information which was gleaned by sitting literally at the feet of tremendously big rabbis who deal with marriage and marriage-related topics and issues on a consistent basis, and that's where all of this information comes from. If you want a good comic book, pick up like a medieval medical book. You pick it up and you start going through like the issues that people used to have and what the doctors would say about those issues. And it's literally funny. It's not funny, it's almost tragic that certain times even the recipe or the potion that they were trying to prescribe to help people, it almost seems like it would kill the person. But very often, if you look back in history, when people would go to a doctor, they'd say to a doctor, hey, this is bothering me. My throat hurts, my head hurts, I have fever, I have chills, runny nose, my ears hurt, I feel weak. The doctor would say to you, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Okay, here, let's take these herbs, crush them up, and put them in your nose. You should take a warm bath and then come out and go under hot blankets because you have chills and fever. And the doctor would start identifying all of the symptoms, and they would say, okay, these symptoms are bad. Let's address these symptoms and get rid of them. And the person would slowly deteriorate, and then they would die. Nowadays, you go to a doctor, you say to him, hey, I have all those symptoms that I just described. The doctor turns to you and says, oh, that's terrible. Here's a pill. Take it twice a day for 7 days, and you'll be fine. A foolish person looks at the doctor and says, my nose is running. You're giving me should I put the pill in my nose? It doesn't make sense. What are you giving me? Because we recognize nowadays that there's an ailment, there's a problem that's underlying, that you take, the doctor says to you, you fool, you have strep. When you have strep, you don't need to jam pills up your nose. You have to take the pill, and then everything else will just get better. So often in marriage, we focus on the symptoms. I could tell you time and time again where people come, they sit down and they go, you know what's wrong with my marriage? She yelled at me for doing this, I left out the garbage, I didn't take it out, and blah, blah, blah. Those are symptoms. Those are not ailments. Those are not the problems that are underlying in a marriage. Those are the things which are painful. Symptoms are really painful. When your nose is running 24 hours a day, when your throat is hurting you, that's very, very painful. But that's a symptom. That's not the ailment. If you're smart, you forget the symptom. You say, I don't care what she said. I don't care how she said it. I care about why she said it. I want to know what's going on underneath, what's going on behind the scenes. This course is going to focus very, very strongly on the ailments. But those are symptoms. We don't care about those symptoms. We care about the ailment, what's going on underneath. And when we could identify the ailment, we could realize the person just has strep. It's such a simple thing. Just give them the pill and everything else will get better. It makes life so much easier. The male-female attraction is so natural. The male-female relationship is so unnatural. It is natural for people to fight, to bicker, to not get along. Men and women are from two different ends of the universe. This course is guiding couples from two ends of the universe to learn how to connect, how to click together, how to create something we call kesher, which is this deep connection, and it will provide the practical tools to get there. Hopefully, by utilizing 1, 2, or 1,000 of the tools that we're going to give you, you'll be able to build a marriage that your children, your friends, the next generations will be able to look at you and say to you, that is a marriage that I want to emulate. And if we could get there, then we're going to be successful.